Steelers Nation, stop what you're doing right now because we need to talk about a move that might just transform this entire defense. The front office just made a signing that everyone is sleeping on, and I'm about to tell you why this could be the difference between another playoff disappointment and a legitimate Super Bowl run. If you want to stay locked in on every single move the Steelers make this offseason, smash that subscribe button right now because we're breaking down all the news you need to know every single day. All right. Let's dive into something that has me genuinely fired up about this upcoming season. We're talking about Sebastian Joseph-Day. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Who? He's not a flashy name. He's not getting primetime commercials. The national media isn't talking about him. But let me tell you something right now. This man is about to become one of your favorite players on this roster, and here's exactly why. The Steelers brought in Sebastian Joseph-Day during free agency. And this signing might go down as one of the smartest, most underrated moves of the entire offseason, not just for Pittsburgh but across the entire league. We're talking about a veteran defensive tackle who brings exactly what this defense has been desperately missing for years now. And when I say years, I mean it. This has been a glaring weakness that opposing offensive coordinators have exploited over and over again. Let me paint the picture for you. Think back to last season. Think about all those frustrating moments when you watched running backs gash this defense up the middle. Think about those third and shorts that turned into first downs way too easily. Think about how teams would just line up in heavy formations and push the Steelers' defensive line backward like they were on roller skates. It was painful to watch, right? As a fan, you're sitting there screaming at your TV wondering why this keeps happening to a Mike Tomlin defense. Well, there were multiple reasons for that struggle, and we're going to break them all down. First off, let's talk about what was happening at the linebacker position. Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, as much as we want to love them, were not exactly shutting down the run game consistently over the past couple of seasons. That's just the reality. But here's the thing. You can't put all the blame on the linebackers. They were getting put in terrible positions because of what was happening right in front of them at the line of scrimmage. The real issue, the foundation of the problem, was happening with the defensive tackles. Specifically, the Steelers were trying to make Keeanu Benton work as a nose tackle for significant stretches. Now, don't get me wrong, Benton is a talented young player with a bright future ahead of him. But asking him to anchor at the nose and consistently handle double teams, that's not his game. That's not what his body type is built for. He's more of a penetrating three-technique guy, someone who can shoot gaps and create disruption in the backfield. But when you ask him to be that immovable object in the middle, to eat up blockers and control the line of scrimmage, he just gets overwhelmed. Teams figured this out quickly and started attacking that weakness relentlessly. So what happens when your defensive line is getting pushed backward? Everything collapses, your linebackers can't flow freely to the ball, your gap integrity falls apart, running backs find creases they shouldn't find. And suddenly you've got a defense that looks completely lost against the run, even though you've got talented players all over the field. It's a domino effect, and it all starts with controlling the point of attack. Enter Sebastian Joseph-Day. This is where things get really interesting. The Steelers didn't just sign a warm body to fill a roster spot. They signed one of the most consistent and technically sound run defenders in the entire National Football League. I'm talking about a guy who has been doing this at a high level for years, who understands exactly what his role is, and who executes that role better than most. Let me tell you about this man's physical tools because they're absolutely perfect for what Pittsburgh needs. Sebastian Joseph-Day stands 6'4" and weighs in at about 310 pounds. But here's what really sets him apart. His arm length is exceptional. When you're playing defensive tackle, especially at the nose position, arm length is absolutely critical. It's the difference between controlling blockers and getting controlled by them. Those long arms allow him to keep offensive linemen at bay, to maintain leverage, to shed blocks effectively. He can lock out guards and centers before they can get into his body, and once he establishes that position, he's incredibly difficult to move. The technical soundness is what really impresses me, though. This isn't just a big body taking up space. Sebastian Joseph-Day understands hand placement, footwork, gap responsibility, and how to diagnose plays as they develop. He's played in multiple defensive schemes throughout his career, which means he's seen just about everything offenses can throw at him. That experience is invaluable, especially when you're integrating into a new system under a new defensive coordinator. Speaking of the contract, let's talk about the value here because this is where the Steelers front office deserves serious credit. They signed Sebastian Joseph-Day to a 2-year deal worth $11 million total. That breaks down to just $5.5 million per season. In today's NFL, where mediocre players are getting $8, $9, $10 million per year, locking up a proven veteran at this position for $5.5 million is an absolute steal. To put this in perspective, last season Sebastian Joseph-Day was graded as the 41st best defensive tackle out of 127 qualified players according to advanced metrics. That puts him in the top third of all defensive tackles in the league, and the Steelers are paying him middle-of-the-pack money. That's how you build a championship roster, by finding value in free agency and maximizing every dollar. Now let's talk about the man who's going to be coaching him up, Patrick Graham. The new defensive coordinator comes in with a reputation for being creative, for being multiple, for keeping offenses guessing. Graham doesn't just line up in the same formation play after play. He's going to move pieces around. He's going to disguise coverages. He's going to present different looks to opposing quarterbacks and make them uncomfortable. And to run that kind of system effectively, you need versatile players up front who can handle different techniques and different responsibilities. This is another area where Sebastian Joseph-Day becomes absolutely crucial. Throughout his career, he's played nose tackle, 3 technique, 4-eye, and 5 technique. For those who might not know all the technical jargon, that basically means he can line up anywhere along the defensive line and be effective. He can play with his hand in the dirt as a 0 technique nose directly over the center. He can slide to the 3 technique and attack gaps between the guard and tackle. He can play the 4-eye over the tackle's inside shoulder. He can even kick outside to the 5 technique. That versatility is exactly what Patrick Graham wants in his defensive lineman, because it allows him to run all those multiple fronts and creative stunts without having to substitute personnel. The Steelers are technically still running a 3-4 base defense, which includes those 5-man fronts in certain formations. But here's the reality of modern NFL football: teams aren't spending the majority of their time in base defense anymore. The league has evolved to be pass-heavy, which means defenses spend most of their time in nickel packages with 4-down linemen. Understanding this balance and how Sebastian Joseph-Day fits into both scenarios is key to appreciating what he brings to the table. When the Steelers do line up in their base 3-4, especially against run-heavy teams or in short yardage situations, Sebastian Joseph-Day can be that true nose tackle. He'll line up over the center, demand a double team, and allow the linebackers to flow freely to the football. That's the traditional role, and he excels at it. But when they shift to nickel, which will be the majority of defensive snaps, that's where the rotation gets really interesting. In nickel packages, you're looking at Cam Heyward and Derek Carman as the primary starters. These are your every-down guys who can do a little bit of everything. They can stop the run, they can rush the passer, they bring veteran leadership and consistency. But you can't just ride those 2 guys for 70 snaps a game, especially when Cam Heyward is getting up there in age. This is where the rotation becomes so important for keeping everyone fresh and effective throughout the entire season. Keeanu Benton is going to come in on obvious passing downs and later down situations where his penetration ability can really shine. He's going to get after the quarterback, shoot gaps, and create havoc in the backfield. That's when his skill set is maximized. But on early downs, on 1st and 10, on 2nd and short, when you need to shut down the run and force those 3rd and long situations, that's when Sebastian Joseph-Day is going to see significant playing time. He's going to come in and do the dirty work, the unglamorous but absolutely essential job of controlling the line of scrimmage. Think about what this rotation accomplishes from a big picture perspective. You're keeping Cam Heyward fresh throughout the season. How many times have we seen Cam absolutely dominate in September and October, only to look gassed by December and January? The man gives everything he's got on every single snap, but Father Time is undefeated and the wear and tear adds up. By having quality depth like Sebastian Joseph-Day, who can come in and actually produce at a high level, you can manage Cam's snaps intelligently. You can keep him around 60 snaps per game instead of 75 or 80. And when January rolls around and the playoffs begin, you've got a Cameron Heyward who still has gas in the tank, who's still explosive, who can take over games when it matters most. The same logic applies to Derek Carman and the rest of the rotation. When you have 4 legitimate contributors at the defensive tackle position, nobody has to be a hero. Nobody has to play hurt. Nobody has to push through exhaustion. You can keep rotating fresh bodies, and opposing offensive lines never get a break. They're dealing with Cam Heyward's power and experience, then Derek Carman's versatility, then Keeanu Benton's quickness, Then Sebastian Joseph-Day's technique and length. That's exhausting for an offensive line to deal with over the course of a 60-minute game. Now let me get into something a little more technical that really excites me about this signing. Sebastian Joseph-Day is exceptional at what's called 1.5 gap technique. This is a relatively newer concept in NFL defenses that's become increasingly important as offenses have evolved. Let me explain what this means and why it matters so much. Traditional defenses used to play either 1 gap or 2 gap techniques. 1 gap meant you're responsible for shooting one specific gap and penetrating. 2 gap meant you're reading the offensive lineman and controlling 2 gaps on either side. Pretty straightforward stuff that's been around forever. But modern offenses started spreading teams out, using more 11 personnel with 3 receivers, forcing defenses to play lighter boxes with only 6 or 7 defenders instead of 8. When you've got lighter boxes, you can't just 2 gap everything because you don't have enough help. But you also can't just 1 gap penetrate because running backs will find cutback lanes. So defenses evolved with this 1.5 gap technique. Essentially, defensive linemen are playing with forward momentum, attacking a primary gap, but maintaining the discipline and leverage to squeeze back and control a secondary gap if needed. It requires incredible technique, footwork, and discipline. You have to be aggressive, but controlled. You have to attack, but remain sound. It's a difficult balance, and not every defensive tackle can do it effectively. The Los Angeles Rams absolutely perfected this technique when Brandon Staley was running their defense during their Super Bowl run. They played more 2 high safety structures than any defense in football that season, which meant they consistently had light boxes against the run. By all traditional logic, they should have gotten gashed on the ground, but they didn't. They finished top 3 in run defense that year. How? Because their defensive line, including Sebastian Joseph-Day, executed this 1.5 gap technique at an elite level. They attacked gaps aggressively, created penetration, but always maintained gap integrity so running backs couldn't cut back for big gains. Sebastian Joseph-Day was literally in that rotation alongside Aaron Donald during that championship season. He learned from one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history. He was coached up by one of the brightest defensive minds in Brandon Staley. He was part of a scheme that revolutionized how defenses can remain sound against the run while still playing the coverage structures needed to stop modern passing attacks. And now he's bringing all that experience, all that knowledge, all that championship pedigree to Pittsburgh. This is exactly what Patrick Graham wants to implement. Graham is known for playing a lot of 2 high safety looks, for giving quarterbacks different coverage shells to process, for making the passing game difficult. But you can't do that if you're getting run all over. You need defensive linemen who can hold up with lighter boxes, who can execute this 1.5 gap technique, who can be disciplined in their rush lanes while still creating disruption. Sebastian Joseph-Day checks every single one of those boxes. The fan reaction to this signing has been interesting to watch unfold. Initially, when the news broke, it wasn't met with the same fanfare as some of the other moves the Steelers made. People were excited about other signings, other positions, flashier names. But as training camp approaches and people start diving deeper into the tape, into the scheme fit, into what this defense is actually trying to accomplish, the excitement around Sebastian Joseph-Day is building significantly. Steelers fans on social media have started breaking down his film from last season. They're watching how he controls double teams. They're seeing how he sets edges. They're noticing how he rarely gets blown off the ball. And the consensus is growing that this might be one of the sneakiest, smartest signings of the entire offseason. The people who really know football, who understand the nuances of defensive line play, they're absolutely fired up about what he's going to bring to this unit. Analysts who cover the team have been similarly complimentary. The phrase that keeps coming up is exactly what they needed. That's not always the case with free agent signings. Sometimes teams sign good players who don't necessarily address specific weaknesses. But this is different. This is a targeted acquisition of a player whose skill set directly addresses the biggest weakness this defense has had. It's smart roster construction, and it's the kind of move that championship teams make. Looking ahead to what this means for the season, the implications are massive. If the Steelers can genuinely shore up their run defense, if they can consistently get teams into third and long situations, this entire defense elevates to another level. Last year, especially down the stretch, this was a good defense. They had moments of dominance. But they also had frustrating games where they got pushed around, where they couldn't get off the field on third down, where they couldn't make the key stop when it mattered most. With Sebastian Joseph-Day anchoring the middle, with a healthy rotation keeping everyone fresh, with Patrick Graham dialing up creative pressures and disguises, this defense has legitimate potential to be elite. Not just good, not just solid, but genuinely elite, top 5 in the league type production. That's the difference between being a wildcard team and being a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the AFC. Think about it from a larger perspective. The AFC is absolutely loaded right now. You've got the Chiefs still at the top. You've got the Bills, the Bengals when healthy, the Ravens, the Chargers making moves. If the Steelers want to compete at that level, they can't have any glaring weaknesses. The offense is getting upgrades. The special teams are solid, but the defense is really going to be the identity of this team, and it needs to be dominant. Sebastian Joseph-Day is a major piece of making that happen. So when you step back and look at this defensive line as a complete unit heading into the season, what grade are we giving it? You've got Cameron Heyward, a future Hall of Famer who's still playing at a Pro Bowl level. You've got Derek Carman providing that steady, reliable veteran presence. You've got Keeanu Benton as an explosive young player with tremendous upside. And now you've got Sebastian Joseph-Day bringing championship experience, versatility, and elite run defense. The depth is there. The talent is there. The scheme fit is perfect. Personally, I'm giving this defensive line an A grade without hesitation. This is one of the best units in the entire NFL when you factor in talent, depth, versatility, and coaching. There are maybe 5 or 6 teams that can say they have a better defensive line than what Pittsburgh is putting on the field this season. That's elite company, and it's a huge reason why expectations for this defense are sky high. The beauty of this signing is that it's not just about this year either. It's a 2-year deal, which means the Steelers have Sebastian Joseph-Day for the 2025 and 2026 seasons. That provides continuity, which is so important for defensive line play. These guys are going to develop chemistry, learn each other's tendencies, and get better as a unit over time. By year 2, this could be an absolutely devastating group that opposing offensive coordinators lose sleep over. As we approach training camp, the excitement is building. Fans want to see how Patrick Graham utilizes all these pieces. They want to see the rotation in action. They want to see if Sebastian Joseph-Day can make the immediate impact that we're all expecting. The buzz around this defense is real, and it's justified. Here we go, Steelers. This season is going to be special, and moves like bringing in Sebastian Joseph-Day are exactly why. Don't sleep on this signing. Don't overlook what he brings to the table. This is the kind of veteran addition that puts a team over the top, and we're all going to be talking about how smart this move was when this defense is dominating come January.